The blizzard howl cut across the frozen prairie like a dull blade. Marcus Ashford pulled his collar higher, squinting against the white that swallowed everything past 10 yards. His horse's breath came in ghost clouds. The reins cracked under his grip, leather stiff with cold. He'd been tracking wolf sign when he saw the wagon, overturned, half buried in snowdrifts, the canvas cover torn and flapping. No smoke, no movement, just the wind and the crows circling overhead, waiting. Marcus dismounted. His boots punched through the snow crust with sounds like breaking bones. Two bodies lay twisted in the white. A man and a woman, frozen mid-reach toward something they'd never hold again. Blood had turned the snow rust-colored around them before the cold locked it all in place. The smell hit him, gun oil mixed with iron and the particular emptiness of death. He removed his hat despite the wind cutting his scalp. That's when he heard it. A rustling beneath the torn canvas still clinging to the wagon bed. Marcus pulled the fabric aside. A child stared up at him. Maybe 9 years old. Her face was bone white except for her lips, which had gone blue. In her small hands, she clutched a porcelain doll like it was the last solid thing in the world. The doll's painted face had a single crack near the left eye. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just watched him with eyes that had already seen more than they should. Marcus wrapped her in his coat and lifted her onto his saddle. She weighed almost nothing. The doll stayed locked in her grip, pressed between them as they rode toward Red Creek. By the time they reached town, the sun had dropped low enough to paint the snow orange. Marcus guided his horse down Main Street toward the general store. Women clustered near the entrance turned to stare. Their whispers rose like smoke. Mrs. Hawkins stood on the boardwalk, arms crossed. "Why's a millionaire bachelor taking in a street orphan?" her voice carried. "Ain't natural." Another woman leaned close to her companion. "Men his age don't rescue little girls unless—" She trailed off, but her raised eyebrow finished the thought. Marcus dismounted and lifted the child down. Her fingers stayed white-knuckled around the doll. He walked into the store with her small hand caught in his. The shopkeeper, Stillwater, looked up from his counter and his expression went flat. "She needs boots," Marcus said, "and a coat that fits." Stillwater glanced at the child, then back at Marcus. "You paying Mr. Ashford, or is this charity?" Marcus pulled $5 from his pocket and dropped them on the counter one at a time. Each coin rang against the wood like a judgment bell. "That answer your question?" He was turning to leave when he saw the man in the expensive suit standing in the doorway of the bank across the street. The man's eyes were the color of creek ice. He watched Marcus and the child with the calculating stillness of a snake deciding whether to strike. Then he smiled, tipped his hat. "Mr. Ashford," he called, crossing the street. "We need to talk about my niece." The man's boots clicked across the frozen street. Marcus felt the child's hand tighten in his. Raymond Caldwell. He extended a gloved hand. Marcus didn't take it. Caldwell's smile never reached his eyes. "I see you found my brother's daughter." "Found two bodies by an overturned wagon," Marcus said. "Parents shot, wheel sabotaged." "Tragic accident." Caldwell's voice was smooth as lamp oil. "The frontier can be unforgiving." "Wasn't an accident." Caldwell's gaze dropped to the child. "Lily, sweetheart, Uncle Raymond's here now. You're safe." The girl pressed herself against Marcus's leg. Her breathing went shallow and quick. "She doesn't seem to know you," Marcus observed. "Trauma does strange things to children." Caldwell reached into his coat. Marcus's hand moved toward his sidearm before he saw it was just papers. "I have documentation. Legal guardianship was established when her parents left St. Louis. I'm her closest living relative." Marcus took the papers. Official stamps, signatures, everything looked legitimate. But the child's fear felt more true than any document. "I'll be taking her home now," Caldwell said. "She's coming with me tonight." Marcus's voice went flat and final. "She's half frozen and in shock. Tomorrow we can sort the legal matters." Caldwell's jaw tightened. "The law is clear, Mr. Ashford." "So is what's right." Marcus lifted the child back onto his horse. "Doc Marsh needs to examine her. Make sure she's fit to travel. You want to argue with a medical opinion?" For a moment something cold flickered behind Caldwell's eyes. Then the smile returned. "Of course. The child's welfare comes first. I'll call on you tomorrow at your ranch." He touched his hat brim. "Sleep well, Mr. Ashford. Both of you." Marcus guided his horse east out of town. He felt Caldwell's gaze on his back until the buildings disappeared into the gray twilight. The Ashford ranch house sat alone against the prairie, like a ship on a frozen ocean. Smoke rose from the chimney. Joe Tanner, his foreman, stood on the porch with a rifle cradled loose in his arms. "Expecting trouble, Joe?" "Saw you ride into town." Joe's eyes moved to the child. "Figured you might be bringing some back." Marcus dismounted and handed the girl down. "This is Lily. Parents were killed. She needs a warm bed and hot food." Joe nodded once. He'd worked for Marcus 15 years and knew when questions could wait. Inside, the house still smelled of old grief and older wood smoke. Marcus hadn't changed much since Martha died. Her room remained exactly as she'd left it. Even her hairbrush still sat on the dresser, strands of auburn hair caught in the bristles like trapped sunlight. He led Lily to that room now, pulled the dust covers off the furniture. The bed frame creaked as he tested the mattress. Joe brought blankets while Marcus lit the small stove in the corner. "I'll heat some stew," Joe said, leaving them alone. Marcus knelt beside the bed where Lily sat rigid, still clutching her doll. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "Nobody's going to hurt you." She stared at him. Her lips moved, but no sound came. "The doll," Marcus said. "It must be important." Her fingers tightened until her knuckles went white. She shook her head once, sharp and desperate. "All right," Marcus stood. "You hold on to it as long as you need." He moved toward the door, but her voice stopped him, barely a whisper. "It stays with me." "Yes," Marcus said. "It stays with you." In the main room, Joe had stew warming on the stove. The smell of salt pork and beans filled the kitchen. Marcus poured himself coffee from the pot that was always on. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted the cup. He steadied it against his chest. "That man who claimed to be her uncle," Joe said. "Caldwell. I know that name." "From where?" "Bank was foreclosing on the Brennan homestead last month. 160 acres north of here. Caldwell was the one pushing the paperwork through." Joe stirred the stew. "Heard he's got money troubles. Gambling debts to some Chicago outfit." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Brennans? That was Lily's family? If she's that Brennan girl, then she owns that land. Mineral survey came back last fall. Silver deposits. Worth maybe $200,000. Marcus set his coffee down. His hand was shaking worse now. "Caldwell killed them for the deed." "That'd be my guess." Joe ladled stew into 2 bowls. "Question is, where's the deed now?" Marcus thought of the child upstairs, the way she held that doll like it contained all the safety left in the world. "I think," he said slowly, "we'd better keep that girl very close." Outside, a horse's hooves crunched across frozen ground, then stopped, watching. Sunday morning came bright and bitter cold. Marcus hitched the wagon and helped Lily climb up. She wore one of Martha's old dresses, altered hastily by Joe's clumsy needlework. The hem hung uneven, but it was clean and warm. The doll stayed pressed against her chest. The church bell rang across the frozen prairie as they approached Red Creek. Its sound carried for miles in the cold air, 3 slow peals that called the scattered community together. Marcus helped Lily down in front of the white clapboard building. Families clustered on the steps in their Sunday clothes, breath rising in clouds as they talked. The conversations died when Marcus appeared with the child. Reverend Samuel Pike stood at the church door, his white hair bright against his black coat. He was 70 but stood straight as a fence post. "Marcus Ashford, been a long time since you darkened this doorway." "Been a long time since I had reason to," Marcus said. Pike's eyes moved to Lily. "And who's this?" "Lily Brennan. Her parents were killed. I'm taking her in." The words fell into the cold morning like stones into water. Ripples of whispers spread through the gathered crowd. Mrs. Hawkins leaned toward the woman beside her, her voice carried intentionally. "Taking her in? A 60-year-old bachelor and a child? Someone should notify the territorial marshal." Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, but Pike raised his hand. "The Lord commands us to care for orphans and widows. Marcus is answering that call." He placed a weathered hand on Lily's shoulder. "Welcome, child." They moved toward the church entrance when Raymond Caldwell appeared at the bottom of the steps. He wore a suit that cost more than most men in Red Creek made in 6 months. 2 men flanked him, hard-faced drifters with guns worn low and loose. "Reverend Pike," Caldwell said warmly, "I wonder if I might address the congregation before services begin. A family matter of some urgency." Pike's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened. "The church steps are public ground." Caldwell mounted the steps until he stood above the crowd. He pulled papers from his coat with a flourish. "I want everyone here to witness this. I am Raymond Caldwell, legal guardian to Lily Grace Brennan, as established by her late father before his tragic death. He held up the documents. I have come to collect my niece and ensure she receives proper care from her blood family. Marcus stepped forward. The child was half frozen when I found her, traumatized. She needs family, Caldwell interrupted smoothly. Not charity from strangers, however well-intentioned. He smiled at the crowd. I'm sure Mr. Ashford means well, but a young girl needs a woman's care. A proper home, not a bachelor's ranch. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. Marcus saw heads nodding, saw the way people looked at him, suspicion mixing with small-town righteousness. Lily's hand found his and gripped tight. Furthermore, Caldwell continued, I've consulted with Judge Harmon. He agrees that blood relation takes precedence over charitable impulses. The law is quite clear on this matter. The law, Pike said quietly, is meant to serve justice, not always the same thing. Caldwell's smile hardened. With respect, Reverend, the law is the law. Judge Harmon will hear this matter formally tomorrow at 10 o'clock. He looked directly at Marcus. I expect you to bring Lily to the courthouse then, unless you plan to defy a legal summons. Marcus felt his chest tighten. His heart hammered against his ribs in a rhythm that wasn't quite right. He took a slow breath and forced his voice steady. I'll be there. Excellent. Caldwell descended the steps. His hired men followed like shadows. At the bottom, he turned back. Oh, and Mr. Ashford, I've heard about your generous nature, your wealth. I'm sure you can appreciate that a man who truly cares about a child's welfare would put her needs above his own desires. His eyes glittered. Even if it means letting her go to those who have the legal right to raise her. The threat underneath the words was clear. Fight this and he'd paint Marcus as something ugly, something that would destroy him in this small community where reputation was currency. Caldwell walked away. The crowd parted for him like water around a stone. Judge Harmon's chambers smelled of old tobacco and older law books. The judge himself sat behind a desk, piled with papers, his jowls hanging loose and his eyes small and calculating. Marcus stood with Lily beside him. Caldwell sat in the opposite chair, relaxed and confident. This is straightforward, Judge Harmon said without preamble. Mr. Caldwell has documentation proving guardianship, blood relation. The law favors family over strangers in matters of orphaned children. The child fears him, Marcus said. Children often fear discipline, Caldwell replied smoothly. My brother was permissive. I'll provide structure, education, everything she needs. Marcus pulled out his own papers. I have financial resources, the best schools in the territory, a stable home. A home without a woman, Judge Harmon interrupted. Without proper moral supervision for a young girl. He shuffled papers on his desk. Mr. Ashford, your generosity is noted, but the law is clear. Unless you can prove Mr. Caldwell is unfit, which these documents suggest he is not, custody will be awarded to the blood relative. Marcus felt the walls closing in. His heart beat irregularly against his ribs. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the winter cold seeping through the window. I'm giving you 30 days, Judge Harmon said, to settle Miss Brennan's affairs. Make whatever arrangements you wish, but at the end of that time, unless you can provide evidence that Mr. Caldwell is unsuitable, she goes with her uncle. He banged his gavel once. Next case. Outside the courthouse, Caldwell paused beside Marcus. You're a wealthy man, Mr. Ashford. I'm sure we could come to some financial arrangement for the child's sake. I don't buy children, Marcus said. Caldwell's smile turned cold. Everyone buys something, Mr. Ashford. The question is always just the price. He walked away, boots clicking on the frozen boardwalk. Lily looked up at Marcus. He's the bad man, she whispered. The one Papa was running from. The sign outside Doc Helena Marsh's office swung in the wind with a sound like a rusty hinge. Marcus helped Lily down from the wagon. Inside, the office smelled of carbolic acid and dried herbs hanging from the ceiling beams. Doc Marsh looked up from grinding something in a mortar. She was 58 with iron-gray hair pulled back severe and hands that moved with practiced certainty. Marcus Ashford, heard you found yourself a daughter. Not according to Judge Harmon. Harmon's been in Caldwell's pocket since the man arrived in Red Creek. She wiped her hands on her apron. Let me look at the child. Lily submitted to the examination without protest. Doc Marsh checked her eyes, her throat, listened to her breathing. Her fingers paused on bruises along Lily's arms, old ones, yellowed and fading. "These didn't come from the wagon accident," Doc Marsh said quietly. "No," Lily whispered. "Uncle Raymond, when we lived in St. Louis. Before Mom and Papa said we had to leave." Doc Marsh's jaw tightened. She finished the examination in silence. When Lily went to sit by the window, Doc gestured Marcus into her back room. The space was lined with medical texts and legal volumes side by side. "Interesting collection," Marcus observed. "I used to read law before I took up medicine." Doc Marsh poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle on her shelf. "Got disbarred 12 years ago for testifying against a judge who was taking bribes. Judge Harmon's predecessor, actually." She handed Marcus a glass. "Frontier doesn't forget, but it does let you reinvent yourself." Marcus took a small sip. His chest still felt tight from the courthouse. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're going to need someone who knows how the law really works, not how it's supposed to work." She leaned against her desk. "Caldwell's got Harmon convinced through some combination of money and leverage. Blood relation usually wins these cases anyway, but if the child has independent legal standing, property, inheritance, a stake that requires adult supervision, the calculation changes." "She might own land," Marcus said carefully. "Her parents' homestead, if the deed survived." Doc Marsh's eyes sharpened. "Mineral rights?" "Silver, worth enough to kill for." "Then you need to find that deed before Caldwell does." She set down her glass. "And you need to be careful. Your heart's racing. I can hear it from here." Marcus touched his chest. The irregular hammering had eased but hadn't stopped. "I'm fine." "You're 62 and under enormous stress. That's not fine." She pulled out a stethoscope. "Let me listen." "Doc." "Sit down, Marcus." He sat. She pressed the cold metal to his chest and listened. Her expression gave nothing away, but when she straightened, concern lined her face. "Your heart's struggling. The rhythm's off. You need rest. Less excitement. Definitely not a custody battle with a man who's already committed murder. I can't just hand her over." "I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you need to be smart about this fight, because if you push too hard, your heart might give out before you win." Marcus stood slowly. Through the doorway he could see Lily sitting by the window, still clutching that doll. Sunlight caught the crack in the porcelain face. "I failed my daughter once," he said quietly. "I was off on a cattle drive when Martha went into labor. By the time I got back, she and the baby were both gone. 8 years I've been living with that." He met Doc Marsh's eyes. "I won't fail another child." Doc Marsh studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right, but you do this my way. Smart, strategic. We find the deed, we build a legal case, we use the law against Caldwell the same way he's using it against you." "How?" "Let me think on it. Meanwhile, keep the child close. Watch for anyone asking too many questions." She walked him to the door. "And Marcus, get some rest. I'm serious about your heart." That evening, back at the ranch, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with his ledger open. The leather binding was worn smooth from years of handling. He'd kept records here every night since building the house: cattle counts, expenses, weather patterns. And since Martha died, other things, small observations that had nowhere else to go. February 3rd, 1887. Lily spoke 3 full sentences today. Progress. Joe Tanner came in from checking the stock. He poured himself coffee and sat across from Marcus. The fire popped in the stove. Outside, wind rattled the windows. "There's talk in town," Joe said, "about you and the girl." "I know. Some of it's ugly." Marcus closed the ledger. "I know that too." Joe was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled an envelope from his pocket. "This came yesterday, from Caldwell. Offered me $5,000 to testify that you're unstable, that you've been drinking heavy, that the ranch is falling apart." Marcus looked up sharply. Joe stood and walked to the stove. He opened the iron door and tossed the envelope into the flames. The paper curled and blackened. "5,000's a lot of money, but my father was dying 15 years ago, needed a surgeon we couldn't afford. You paid for it without being asked, saved his life." Joe watched the fire consume the money. "Some things ain't for sale, boss." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. "Thank you, Joe." "Don't thank me yet. Caldwell's not going to stop with bribes." Joe poured more coffee. "Man that desperate, he'll try other things, worse things." From upstairs came the creak of floorboards, Lily awake and moving. Marcus heard her soft footsteps in Martha's old room. "We need to find out what Caldwell wants badly enough to kill for," Marcus said. "Before he decides killing again is his best option." Joe nodded. "I'll ride out to the Brennan place tomorrow, see what's left. Maybe there's something the claim jumpers missed." Outside, a coyote howled, long and mournful. Another answered from closer by, the sound of predators circling in the dark. Market day brought half of Red Creek to the town square. Wagons lined the street. Vendors called out prices for seed and tack and cloth. The smell of roasting meat mixed with horse sweat and mud where the snow had begun its slow surrender to March. Marcus walked with Lily through the crowd. He'd promised her new boots, proper ones, not the oversized pair she'd been wearing. Doc Marsh had said routine was important for traumatized children. Normal activities, simple kindnesses, but nothing felt normal with Caldwell's 30-day deadline hanging over them. They were at the cobbler's stall when Marcus heard Caldwell's voice rise above the crowd noise. "Gentlemen, I appreciate your concern." Caldwell stood near the bandstand with a cluster of townsmen around him. His voice carried with practiced ease. "A child needs stability, moral guidance, not the whims of a wealthy recluse playing at charity." Marcus felt Lily's hand tighten in his. "Mr. Ashford is a respected rancher," someone said. Marcus recognized the voice, Tom Chen, who ran the feed store. "Respected for his money," Caldwell replied smoothly. "But what do we really know about him? He's lived alone for 8 years, never comes to church, never participates in community affairs." He paused for effect. "And now suddenly he takes in a young girl, a man his age, without a wife, without any woman's supervision?" The implication hung in the air like smoke. Marcus started toward them, but his chest suddenly clenched. Pain shot down his left arm. The world tilted sideways. "Papa!" Lily's voice sounded far away. He grabbed for the nearest wagon wheel, but his knees buckled. The packed dirt came up fast. Voices shouted. Boots thundered closer. Through the gray edges of his vision, Marcus saw Caldwell push through the crowd. The man's face showed concern, but his eyes gleamed with something colder. Victory. "Someone fetch Doc Marsh," a woman cried. Marcus tried to speak, but his chest wouldn't release enough air. The pain was a fist squeezing his heart. His whole left side had gone numb. Then Lily was there. Her small face appeared above him, pale but determined. "Hold on," she whispered. "Like Papa taught me." She ran. Marcus heard her boots slapping against the boardwalk. The crowd murmured, but nobody followed her. They were too busy staring at him, too busy watching a wealthy man die in the dirt. The pain peaked. Marcus thought of Martha, of promises broken, of a child he'd found too late and might lose too soon. Lily returned running. She had a small brown bottle clutched in her hand. Doc Marsh's office was 3 blocks away. How had she known? "Medicine," Lily said breathlessly. She uncorked the bottle and tipped it to his lips. "From the cabinet in the room, the one with the blue label. Mama showed me what Papa took when his heart hurt." Marcus swallowed. The liquid burned, going down. Tasted like bitter almonds in desperation. Slowly, the fist around his heart loosened. Air returned to his lungs. The gray receded. Doc Marsh arrived at full run, her medical bag swinging. She knelt beside him, fingers on his wrist, counting. "What did you give him?" she demanded of Lily. "Digitalis," Lily said. "Mama was a nurse. She taught me." Doc Marsh's eyebrows rose. She examined the bottle. "This is my formula. How did you know where it was?" "I saw it when we were there. The blue label. Mama said digitalis is for hearts that beat wrong." Lily's voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled. "Is he dying?" "Not today." Doc Marsh looked at Marcus. "But this is a warning you can't ignore." Sheriff Wade pushed through the crowd. He was younger than Marcus, barely 40, with a face that wanted to be fair, but usually settled for convenient. "What happened here? Mr. Ashford had a medical episode," Doc Marsh said. "He needs rest. A wagon to take him home." Caldwell stepped forward. "Perhaps this demonstrates my point, Sheriff. Mr. Ashford's health is clearly failing. Is it responsible to burden him with caring for a child? The stress could kill him." "The stress of you hounding him is what's killing him," Doc Marsh said sharply. "I'm simply exercising my legal rights." Caldwell's voice dripped false concern. "Perhaps it would be kinder to everyone, including Mr. Ashford himself, if we resolved this matter quickly, for his own sake." Marcus tried to sit up. Joe Tanner appeared from somewhere and helped him to his feet. The crowd watched in silence. "I'm fine," Marcus said. His voice came out weak. He hated the sound of it. "You're not fine," Doc Marsh said quietly. "And everyone here knows it now." Caldwell smiled. Mr. Ashford, I bear you no ill will. You've been generous to my niece, but surely you can see that continuing this fight will kill you. He moved closer, lowering his voice so only Marcus and those nearest could hear. Step aside. Let Lily come with family who can care for her without risking their own lives. I'll even compensate you for your trouble. $10,000. 20. Name your price. Marcus looked at Lily. She stood rigid, still holding the empty medicine bottle. Her eyes held something he recognized, the same look Martha had given him once when she asked if he'd come home for her birthing. The look that said, "Choose me. Please choose me." "No price," Marcus said. Caldwell's smile vanished. "Then you're choosing death, Mr. Ashford. Your funeral." He walked away through the parting crowd. Doc Marsh leaned close. "Marcus, you can't survive another attack like this. The next one will kill you. You have to withdraw from the custody fight for your own survival." Lily's hand found his. Her fingers were cold and small and trembling. "What's life worth?" Marcus said quietly. "If I can't live with myself." The week that followed moved slow as cold honey. Marcus spent most of it in bed on Doc Marsh's strict orders. Lily brought him meals on trays and sat in Martha's old rocking chair reading aloud from books she found on the shelf, adventure stories and poetry collections gathering dust since his daughter's death. Her voice was soft but steady. Sometimes she stumbled over bigger words. Marcus would correct her gently and she'd repeat them until they came smooth. "What happens to the ranch if you die?" she asked one evening. The sun was setting orange through the window. The room smelled of the chamomile tea Doc Marsh had prescribed. Marcus set down the cup carefully. His hands were steadier now, but the weakness remained. "It goes to my cousin in Kansas. Man I haven't spoken to in 20 years. "And me?" The question hung between them. Marcus looked at her, this small person who'd walked into his life through snow and blood and stayed despite everything trying to pry her loose. "The judge would give you to Caldwell," he said. Honesty seemed like the only gift he had left to offer. "The law favors blood." Lily nodded slowly. She set aside her book and came to sit on the edge of his bed. "Papa had a saying. He said the right path is rarely the easy one, but it's the one worth taking. Your father was a wise man. He was scared, though, at the end." Her fingers worried at the hem of her dress. "He told Mama that bad men were coming, that they wanted the papers. He made her promise to run if anything happened to him." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She didn't run fast enough." Marcus reached out and covered her small hand with his weathered one. "I'm sorry." "Are you scared?" she asked. "Of dying?" He thought about lying, decided against it. "Yes, but not of dying itself, of leaving you alone, with no one to stand between you and men like Caldwell." Lily looked at him with those two old eyes. "Then don't die." "I'm trying not to." She smiled slightly. It was the first real smile he'd seen from her. "Try harder." That night, after Lily had gone to sleep, Marcus heard horses outside. He reached for the revolver he kept under his pillow, but Doc Marsh appeared in the doorway first. "You have visitors," she said, "and before you get agitated, they're the helpful kind." Reverend Pike entered first, his white hair catching the lamplight. Behind him came Joe Tanner, and behind Joe, to Marcus's surprise, came Tom Chen from the feed store. "We've been talking," Pike said without preamble. He pulled a folded paper from his coat. 31 signatures, people willing to testify to your character, your standing in the community, your fitness as a guardian. Marcus took the paper, names he recognized, some he'd done business with, others he barely knew. "Why?" "Because Caldwell's been asking questions around town," Tom Chen said, "about mineral rights, about the Brennan homestead, about how much the land might be worth." His jaw tightened. "My grandfather lost his laundry to a land speculator 20 years ago. I recognize the smell of that kind of greed." "There's more," Doc Marsh said. She moved to Marcus's bedside and lowered her voice. "I sent a telegram to the medical board in St. Louis. Asked about Caldwell's background. He's not just a land speculator." She paused. "He was a lawyer, disbarred 5 years ago for forging estate documents. Tried to steal an inheritance from a widow and her children." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "And Judge Harmon knows this?" "Harmon knows whatever Caldwell's paid him to know," Pike said, "or not know, as the case may be." "So we have proof he's unfit," Marcus said. "We have proof he's a criminal," Doc Marsh corrected. "But without hard evidence connecting him to your case, To Lily specifically, it's just old accusations. Harmon can dismiss it as a man who's turned his life around. Joe Tanner spoke up. I rode out to the Brennan place like I said. Cabin's burned. Somebody torched it after the family left. But I found wagon tracks, recent ones, leading from the homestead toward where you found that overturned wagon. Someone was following them? Marcus said. Someone who knew they were running, who knew which route they'd take. Joe's expression was grim. That wagon accident wasn't opportunistic murder. It was planned. Marcus pushed himself up against the pillows despite the protest from his chest. Lily knows something, or has something. That's why Caldwell wants her so badly. Not for family. For whatever her parents had that he needs. The deed, Doc Marsh said. It has to be. But where would a terrified 9-year-old hide a land deed while running for her life? Marcus thought of Lily upstairs. The way she clutched that porcelain doll like it was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. The way she never let it out of her sight. I think, yeah, he said slowly. We need to ask the child what's inside that doll. Pike shook his head. If she knows Caldwell killed her parents for what she's hiding, forcing her to reveal it might break whatever trust you've built. Then we don't force, Marcus said. We ask, and we make sure she knows she's safe enough to tell the truth. Doc Marsh checked his pulse one more time. Your heart's still weak, Marcus. You can't afford more stress, more confrontation. I know. Marcus looked at the paper with 31 signatures, 31 people willing to stand with him. But some things are worth the risk. Outside, the March wind rattled the windows. Winter's grip was loosening, but spring hadn't yet arrived. The world hung suspended between seasons, waiting to see which would win. Morning came with the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. Marcus felt stronger, strong enough to sit at the kitchen table with coffee and watch Lily feed the chickens through the window. She moved carefully, scattering grain with the same deliberate precision she brought to everything. The doll sat on the porch railing where she could see it. Joe came in smelling of horses and leather. Town's buzzing. Caldwell spent yesterday buying drinks at the saloon, talking loud about how much he cares for his poor orphaned niece, how tragic it would be if she ended up with an old man who might die any day and leave her twice orphaned. He's salting the ground, Marcus said, making sure public opinion turns before the custody hearing. It's working. Mrs. Hawkins has half the church ladies convinced you're unfit. Joe poured himself coffee. But there's other talk, too. Quieter talk. About Caldwell's past in St. Louis. About money he owes to some Chicago outfit. Gambling debts. Marcus looked up sharply. How much? Numbers vary. Some say 50,000, others claim twice that. Joe sat down. Either way, it's more than a land speculator should owe, unless he's been speculating with borrowed money and losing. The pieces were aligning. A disbarred lawyer with crushing debt, a homestead with valuable mineral rights, a family running scared with documents someone would kill to possess. He's desperate, Marcus said. That makes him more dangerous. Lily came back inside, brushing grain dust from her hands. She looked at both men, and something in their expressions made her go still. What's wrong? Marcus gestured to the chair beside him. Lily, we need to talk about your parents, about what they were running from. She sat slowly. Her fingers immediately began worrying at the fabric of her dress. Your father had papers, Marcus continued gently. Important papers. Papers that someone wanted badly enough to kill for. Do you know where those papers are? Lily's gaze dropped to the table. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, Papa said if the bad men came, I should hide. I should hold on to Mama's doll and not let go no matter what. He said the doll would keep me safe. The doll, Marcus said carefully. Is there something inside it? Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Papa made me promise never to tell. He said telling would make the bad men hurt me. Lily. Marcus reached across and took her small hand. The bad men already hurt your parents. They're trying to hurt you now by taking you away from here. The only way to stop them is to know what they want, to use it against them. But if I tell, they'll take it, and then Papa died for nothing. The raw logic of a child's grief. Marcus felt it like a blade between his ribs. Joe spoke up, his voice gentle. What if we promise to keep it safe, to use it the way your papa wanted it used? Not to give it to the bad men, but to stop them. Lily looked at Joe, then at Marcus. Something shifted behind her eyes. Decision or surrender, Marcus couldn't tell which. She stood and walked to where the doll sat on the windowsill, picked it up with both hands. For a moment, Marcus thought she'd refuse. Then she twisted the doll's head. It came off with a soft pop. Inside the hollow porcelain body, rolled tight and protected by oilcloth, was a sheaf of papers. Lily brought them to the table and unrolled them carefully. Her hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. Papa said this is worth more than all the money in the world. He said bad men would kill for it, but good men would die to protect it. Marcus lifted the first document. His breath caught. It was a land deed, 640 acres, registered to John and Sarah Brennan, but that wasn't what made his hands tremble. Stamped across the bottom in official territorial seal, mineral rights included. Doc Marsh appeared in the doorway. She must have come in through the back. She crossed to the table and picked up another document, a mineral survey report dated 4 months earlier. Silver deposits, she read aloud. Estimated value between $150,000 and $200,000 at current market prices. She set it down carefully. This is why they died. And why Caldwell wants Lily, Joe added. Because the deed says John and Sarah Brennan and their lawful heirs. Lily's the heir. Whoever has legal custody of Lily controls the land until she's 18. 9 years of silver mining revenue, Doc Marsh said. At those values, Caldwell could pay off his debts and live like a king. Marcus looked at Lily. Does Caldwell know you have this? Papa hid it the day before we ran. Uncle Raymond came to our house looking for papers. Papa said he didn't have them, but I heard Uncle Raymond tell Mama that he knew Papa had the deed somewhere, that he'd find it even if he had to. She stopped. Her voice had gone small and frightened. Even if he had to what? Marcus asked gently. Even if he had to cut it out of Papa's hands. The room fell silent, except for the ticking of the mantel clock. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall. The sound on the roof was like distant drums. Doc Marsh broke the silence. This changes everything. With this deed, Lily has independent legal standing, property rights, mineral wealth. A guardian isn't just providing charity, they're managing a significant estate. Can we use this in court? Joe asked. In a fair court, yes. Doc Marsh's expression was grim. But Harmon's not fair, and the moment Caldwell knows we have this deed, he'll escalate. Legal means first, probably, but if those fail, he'll try to take her, Marcus finished, by force if necessary. Lily's voice was barely audible. I shouldn't have told. Now the bad men will come. Marcus knelt beside her chair despite the protest from his chest. The bad men were always coming, Lily. Now at least we can see them clearly, and we're ready. Outside, thunder rolled across the prairie. The spring storm was building, and with it, Marcus knew, the real fight would begin. The rain fell steadily through the afternoon, turning the frozen ground to mud. Marcus sat on the porch watching water drip from the eaves. His chest ached dully, not the sharp pain of the attack, but a constant reminder of his mortality. Lily sat beside him in Martha's old rocking chair, too small for it. Her feet didn't touch the floor. The doll was back in her arms, hollow now, but no less precious. I made you sick, she said quietly. All this trouble, your heart. Marcus shook his head. You gave me a reason to keep my heart beating. There's a difference. But Doc Marsh said the stress could kill you. Uncle Raymond said it too. She looked up at him with those old eyes. Maybe I should just go with him, then you'd be safe. And you'd be with a man who murdered your parents. At least you'd be alive. The simple arithmetic of a child sacrifice. Give up everything so someone else might live. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, not his failing heart, but something deeper, the place where he'd locked away all the grief and guilt from Martha's death. Lily. He turned to face her fully. 8 years ago, my daughter died. She was 23, about to have her first baby. I was 300 miles away on a cattle drive. I got the telegram, too late. Never got to say goodbye. Never got to tell her I was sorry for all the times I chose work over her. For all the moments I missed because building this ranch seemed more important than being present. Lily listened, still as stone. I've been half dead ever since, Marcus continued. Going through motions, keeping records in a ledger, like documenting emptiness, could fill it somehow. Then I found you in that snow, and for the first time in 8 years, I wanted to live. Not just exist, actually live. He reached out and covered her small hand with his weathered one. So don't tell me you're making me sick. You're the only thing keeping me alive. A tear rolled down Lily's cheek, just one. She wiped it away quickly. Papa used to say that a broken heart isn't useless. He said it holds more love than a whole one, because it knows how precious love is. Marcus felt his own eyes sting. Your papa was wiser than most men I've known. They sat in silence, watching the rain wash winter away. Inside, Doc Marsh and Joe were planning. Reverend Pike had promised to return with more signatures. The community was rallying, slow but steady, but Marcus knew it wouldn't be enough. Not against Caldwell's desperation, not against corrupt judges and legal machinations. There's a way, Lily said suddenly. To make Uncle Raymond go away forever. What way? Mama told me once. She said if anything happened to her and Papa, I should find Judge Blackburn in Cheyenne. She said he was the only honest judge left in the territory, that he'd help me because he owed Papa a debt. Lily's voice grew stronger. What if we took the deed to him? What if we made it public? Uncle Raymond couldn't steal what everyone knows exists. Marcus considered this. Cheyenne's 3 days' ride in good weather. In this mud, maybe 5. And Caldwell would follow us. Then we don't run, Lily's jaw set with determination that looked strange on a 9-year-old face. We make him come to us. We invite everyone, make it so public he can't do anything but follow the law. She's talking about a public hearing, Doc Marsh said from the doorway. She'd been listening. Force Caldwell to present his case in front of the entire community, make the deed's existence public record. Once everyone knows Lily owns valuable land, Caldwell can't make her disappear without raising questions. Harmon would preside, Joe objected. He'd rule in Caldwell's favor anyway. Not if we hold it somewhere else. Doc Marsh stepped onto the porch. The spring branding, it's a community event, public gathering. What if we combined it with a legal hearing? Invite territorial witnesses. Make it impossible for Harmon to manipulate without everyone seeing. Marcus felt hope flicker. Branding's in 6 weeks, first week of May. Gives us time to prepare, Doc Marsh said, to gather support, to get word to honest officials in Cheyenne. She looked at Lily. And it gives this young lady time to get strong enough to testify about what happened to her parents, about who's really behind their deaths. Caldwell won't wait 6 weeks on his son, Joe said. Not once he knows we have the deed. Then we don't tell him we have it. Marcus stood, feeling steadier than he had in days. We let him think we're still looking, still weak, still fumbling in the dark. Then when he's committed, when he's made his play in front of witnesses, we show our hand. Doc Marsh nodded slowly. It could work, but it's dangerous. If Caldwell suspects the trap, he'll act before the branding. And next time, it won't be legal papers he sends. It'll be men with guns. Then we prepare for that too, Marcus said. Thunder rolled overhead. The rain intensified, hammering the roof like impatient fingers. Lily stood and moved to the porch railing. She held the doll up, letting rain spot its porcelain face. Mama said this doll would protect me, she said quietly. She was right, just not the way I thought. She turned back to Marcus. When do we start? Now, Marcus said. Before I lose my nerve, or my heart gives out, whichever comes first. Lily smiled. It transformed her face from solemn mask to actual child. Your heart won't give out. I won't let it. Inside, Joe began cleaning rifles. Doc Marsh laid out papers, preparing the legal strategy. Reverend Pike arrived despite the rain, bringing more signatures and news from town. The rain washed away the last of winter's ice, and with it, the last of Marcus's hesitation. If Caldwell wanted a fight, he'd have one, but it would be on Marcus's terms, on his land, with his community standing witness. Outside, lightning split the darkening the storm was only beginning. The morning of the branding ceremony arrived clear and warm. Spring had finally broken winter's back. The prairie grass showed green through the brown. Birds Marcus hadn't heard in months called from the cottonwoods. The smell of warming earth replaced the sharp bite of frozen ground. By dawn, wagons were already rolling toward the Ashford Ranch. The spring branding was tradition, neighbors helping neighbors mark new calves, sharing food and labor and gossip. But this year was different. This year, 50 witnesses were coming to see justice done. Marcus stood on his porch watching them arrive. His chest felt tight but steady. Doc Marsh had given him strict instructions and a vial of digitalis to keep in his pocket, just in case. Lily appeared beside him, in a new dress Clara had sewn, blue calico with white buttons. Her hair was braided and tied with ribbon. She looked like any other 9-year-old girl preparing for a community gathering, except for her eyes. Those stayed watchful. Old. Is he coming? She asked. He'll come. Marcus had sent word to Caldwell 3 days ago, a simple message. Custody matter to be resolved publicly at spring branding. All interested parties invited. Territorial witnesses will attend. It was a challenge Caldwell couldn't refuse without looking guilty. In a trap he couldn't escape once sprung. Joe Tanner rode up leading 2 horses. Perimeters secure, got men posted at the north and south approaches. If Caldwell brings hired guns, we'll see them coming. How many did he bring? 3 that I counted. Hard-looking types, but they won't try anything with this many witnesses. Joe glanced at the gathering crowd. Reverend Pike's setting up near the branding corral. Doc Marsh has her papers ready. Tom Chin brought his whole family as witnesses. Even Sheriff Wade showed up, though he looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus nodded. Wade was Harmon's man, but he was also a man who understood which way the wind blew. With 50 citizens watching, he'd have to at least pretend to enforce the law fairly. Reverend Pike climbed onto a wagon bed that served as makeshift stage. His voice carried across the gathering. Friends, neighbors, we're here today for 2 purposes. First, to help Marcus Ashford with his spring branding, as is our custom and duty. Second, to witness a legal matter regarding the custody and welfare of Miss Lily Grace Brennan. The crowd murmured. Some had come just for the branding, others knew exactly what was at stake. I've invited territorial representatives to observe these proceedings, Pike continued, to ensure justice is done according to law and conscience both. A man in a dark suit stepped forward from the crowd. Marcus recognized him from the description Doc Marsh had provided. Marshal Thomas Grimes, territorial law enforcement. His presence changed everything. Whatever happened here today would have weight beyond Red Creek and Judge Harmon's corrupt reach. Caldwell arrived as Pike was speaking. He rode a fine bay horse dressed in his expensive suit. His 3 hired men flanked him, rough types with guns worn low. They dismounted and Caldwell walked through the parting crowd like he owned every inch of ground his boots touched. Reverend Pike, Caldwell called out pleasantly. I appreciate the invitation, though I'm surprised a family matter needs quite this much spectacle. Truth needs witnesses, Pike replied. Justice needs sunlight. Caldwell's smile tightened. Then let's proceed. I have legal documentation proving my guardianship of my niece. Judge Harmon has already ruled preliminarily in my favor. This gathering, while charming, doesn't change the law. The law changes, Doc Marsh said, stepping forward, when new evidence emerges. She held up the land deed. The oilcloth had been removed. The official seal caught the morning sun. Caldwell's face went carefully blank. What is that? The Brennan homestead deed, 640 acres, with full mineral rights, silver deposits estimated at $200,000. Doc Marsh's voice carried clearly. Registered to John and Sarah Brennan and their lawful heirs. She paused. That heir is Lily Grace Brennan, age 9. Current estimated value of her inheritance, enough to make her one of the wealthiest children in the territory. The crowd erupted in whispers. Caldwell's jaw worked, but he kept his composure. That's precisely why the child needs proper legal guardianship. To manage such assets requires someone without a criminal history of forging estate documents, Doc Marsh interrupted. She pulled out another paper. Raymond Caldwell, disbarred from practicing law in Missouri, 1882. Crime, forging a wealthy widow's will to steal her children's inheritance. Caldwell's face flushed. That case was dismissed. The accusations were true, Doc Marsh said. You were disbarred. You fled Missouri ahead of criminal charges, and now you've murdered John and Sarah Brennan to steal their daughter's inheritance exactly the same way. That's a lie, Caldwell's voice rose. I have legal documentation, blood relation. Judge Harmon isn't here, Marshal Grimes said, stepping forward. His hand rested casually on his sidearm. But I am, and I'd like to hear more about these accusations of murder. Lily stepped forward before Marcus could stop her. She walked to the center of the gathering, small and straight-backed. My name is Lily Grace Brennan. My parents were shot 3 months ago. Their wagon was sabotaged. They were running from the man who's standing right there. She pointed at Caldwell. He came to our house in St. Louis. He wanted papers. Papa said no. That night, our house was broken into. Papa said we had to run, that Uncle Raymond would kill us for the deed. The traumatized fantasies of a child, Caldwell said, but sweat beaded on his forehead now. I have witnesses, Doc Marsh said. Neighbors in St. Louis who saw Caldwell threaten the Brennans. Testimony from wagon repairmen who can prove sabotage. And most importantly, she held up a telegram. Records from Chicago showing Caldwell owes $180,000 to a gambling syndicate, due in 30 days, the exact amount he'd gained from controlling Lily's mineral rights for the next 9 years. The pieces fell into place audibly. The crowd's whispers turned hostile. Caldwell's hired men shifted nervously, suddenly aware they were outnumbered 20-1. "This is a setup," Caldwell said. His voice had lost its smooth confidence. "A conspiracy to what?" Marcus spoke for the first time. He stepped down from the porch, moving slowly but steadily toward the gathering. "To protect a child from a murderer? To expose a man who killed for greed?" He stopped in front of Caldwell. "You wanted her for the money. Just the money. You'd have bled that land dry and left her with nothing, just like you did to that widow in Missouri." Caldwell's hand moved toward his coat. Marcus saw it happening. So did Joe Tanner. "I wouldn't," Joe said quietly. His rifle was already raised. Around the gathering, other men had drawn weapons, not pointing, just ready. Caldwell's hand froze. His eyes darted around the circle of witnesses, looking for an exit, finding none. Marshal Grimes stepped forward. "Raymond Caldwell, I'm placing you under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and suspicion of murder. You can come peaceful or difficult, your choice." For a moment, Marcus thought Caldwell would fight, saw the calculation in his eyes. 3 hired guns against 50 armed ranchers. Bad odds even for desperate men. "This isn't over," Caldwell said, but his voice had gone hollow. "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "It is." The marshal took Caldwell by the arm. His hired men surrendered their weapons without protest. Sheriff Wade, to his credit, stepped forward to help secure the prisoners, covering his own complicity by enforcing the law now that the outcome was certain. The crowd erupted in conversation, relief and excitement mixed with the satisfaction of seeing justice done publicly. Marcus felt Lily's hand slip into his. He looked down at her. She was crying now, finally crying. The tears she'd held back for 3 months pouring out in the safety of knowing it was truly over. "Come on," Marcus said gently. "Let's get you somewhere quiet." But Reverend Pike raised his hand. "One more matter, if I may." He pulled out papers of his own. "I have here adoption documents, properly filed, witnessed by territorial authorities, granting full legal guardianship and parental rights to Marcus Ashford." He looked at Marcus. "All they need is your signature and the child's consent." Marcus knelt beside Lily. His chest ached, but his heart felt stronger than it had in years. "What do you say? Want to make this official?" Lily wiped her tears. "Do I get to call you Papa?" "If you want to." "Then yes." She threw her arms around his neck. "Yes, yes, yes." The crowd cheered. Someone started playing a fiddle. Others brought out food they'd packed. What had begun as a legal proceeding transformed into celebration. Marcus signed the papers. Pike witnessed at them. Marshal Grimes added his seal, and just like that, Marcus Ashford had a daughter again. The territorial courthouse in Cheyenne was nothing like Judge Harmon's dusty chamber in Red Creek. This one had polished wood and brass fixtures and the weight of legitimate law. Marshal Grimes had escorted Caldwell here for formal proceedings. Marcus and Lily came as witnesses. The trial lasted 3 days. Prosecutors brought evidence piece by piece. The disbarment records from Missouri. Testimony from St. Louis neighbors who'd heard Caldwell threaten the Brennans. A wagon mechanic who identified sabotage marks on the wheel hub that Marshal Grimes had retrieved from the wreck site. Financial records showing Caldwell's crushing debt to a Chicago gambling syndicate. And Lily's testimony, quiet but unwavering, describing the night Caldwell broke into their St. Louis home, the threats, the fear that sent her family running into winter with everything they owned packed in a single wagon. The jury deliberated 2 hours, guilty on all counts, fraud, conspiracy, 2 counts of murder. The judge, a stern woman named Margaret Blackwell, who'd replaced the corrupt official Doc Marsh had once testified against, sentenced Caldwell to hang. Marcus watched the man who'd tried to steal Lily be led away in chains, watched him diminish from powerful threat to broken criminal in the space of a gavel's fall. There was no satisfaction in it, just a weary sense that justice, however late, had finally arrived. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine warmed the Cheyenne streets. Lily stood on the steps beside Marcus, holding his hand. Doc Marsh and Joe Tanner waited with the wagon. "What happens now?" Lily asked. "Now we go home," Marcus said. "Back to the ranch, back to normal life." "What's normal?" Marcus smiled. "I suppose we'll figure that out together." They reached Red Creek 3 days later. The town looked different somehow, or maybe Marcus was seeing it differently. People waved as they passed, called out greetings. Mrs. Hawkins even stopped them outside the general store. Mr. Ashford, she looked uncomfortable. I owe you an apology. I said some unkind things, made assumptions I shouldn't have. People believe what they want to believe, Marcus said. Not quite forgiveness, but not condemnation either. Still, she reached into her basket and pulled out a jar of preserves. For the child, strawberry. I remember your Martha loved strawberry. Marcus took the jar. Thank you, Mrs. Hawkins. She nodded and hurried away before emotion could overtake her frontier stoicism. At the bank, Mr. Stillwater met them with papers regarding Lily's inheritance. The mineral rights would be held in trust until she turned 18. Marcus, as legal guardian, would manage the land and ensure proper development. The revenue, and there would be considerable revenue once mining operations began, would be split between an account for Lily's future and operational expenses for the ranch. You're raising a wealthy young woman, Stillwater said. See that she learns the value of money, not just the spending of it. I intend to, Marcus replied. That evening they had dinner at Doc Marsh's house. She'd invited Reverend Pike and Joe Tanner. A small celebration. The table smelled of roast chicken and fresh bread. Outside, birds sang their evening songs. To justice, Pike said, raising his glass of cider, however long it takes to arrive. They drank, even Lily, with her own small glass. What will you do now? Doc Marsh asked Marcus. With the ranch and the child and enough money to do whatever you want? Marcus looked at Lily. She was studying her chicken with intense focus, trying to cut it properly with knife and fork like the adults. Martha used to do the same thing. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It warmed instead. I think, Marcus said slowly, I'll do what I should have done 8 years ago. Be present, pay attention, not miss the moments that matter, because I'm too busy chasing the ones that don't. That's not a plan, Joe said. That's philosophy. Sometimes philosophy's the best plan a man can have. A week later, Marcus stood at the branding corral with Joe and 3 hired hands. The spring calves were ready for marking. The fire burned hot. The new brand glowed orange in the coals, the double A that had marked Ashford cattle for 20 years. But Marcus had made a modification. Beside the double A, the blacksmith had added a small star. Simple, clean, permanent. Double A and star, Joe said, examining it. Has a ring to it. Marcus lifted the brand from the fire. The metal shimmered with heat. He pressed it carefully to the first calf's hide. The smell of burned hair rose sharp and acrid. The calf bawled once, then quieted. When Marcus pulled the brand away, the mark was clear. 2 A's and a star. His legacy and hers joined. Lily watched from the fence rail. That's for me, isn't it? The star? That's for you, Marcus confirmed. Every calf born on this ranch from now on wears both our marks. You're part of this place now, legal and permanent. She smiled, climbed down from the fence, and came to stand beside him. Can I help? Next year, maybe. When you're bigger? Papa used to say I was big enough for anything if I tried hard enough. Your papa was right about most things. Marcus handed the brand back to Joe. But some things need time, and that's all right too. They worked through the afternoon. By sunset, every calf wore the double A and star. Marcus's back ached and his chest protested the exertion, but Doc Marsh had cleared him for light work, said his heart was stronger now, something about having a reason to keep beating. That evening, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with his ledger open. The leather was worn smooth, the pages filled with years of records, cattle counts, weather patterns, the daily minutiae of a rancher's life. And since Martha died, other things, observations, memories, attempts to make sense of loss. Marcus dipped his pen in ink, wrote the date, May 15th, 1887. Then in his careful hand, today I became a father again. Not by blood or by accident, but by choice. The hardest and best choice I've ever made. Lily Grace Ashford, my daughter by law and by love. May I do better by her than I did by Martha. May I be present for the moments that matter. May I live long enough to see her grown and happy and free of the shadows that haunt children who've seen too much darkness too young. He paused. Added one more line. A broken heart isn't useless. It holds more love than a whole one because it knows how precious love is. Lily appeared in the doorway. What are you writing? Just ranch business. She came closer and read over his shoulder. Her reading had improved remarkably in the months since the trial. Doc Marsh had been tutoring her, said she had a sharp mind that needed proper education. That's not ranch business, fool, Lily said. That's about me. You are ranch business now. Marcus closed the ledger. the most important business I have. She climbed into the chair beside him. Tell me a story about when you were young. I'm not much of a storyteller. You're getting better, she smiled. Practice makes perfect. That's what Mama used to say. So Marcus told her about his childhood, about learning to ride horses that were half wild, about his father who'd built this ranch from nothing but determination and stubbornness, about the prairie in summer when the grass turned gold and went on forever. Lily listened with complete attention, the way children listen when they're gathering pieces of a person they love, learning them, memorizing them, building a foundation to stand on when the storms come. Outside, stars appeared one by one, the same stars that had witnessed Marcus's loneliest years, the same stars that had watched over a terrified child in a frozen wagon, the same stars that would shine on them both tomorrow and the day after, and all the days that followed. Through the window, Marcus could see the garden plot they'd staked out, still just turned earth. But in a few weeks there would be seeds, then sprouts, then the green promise of growth. Papa, Lily said, the word still new enough to make Marcus's throat tighten. Are we going to be all right? Marcus looked at her. This small, fierce person who'd walked into his life through snow and blood and stayed despite everything, who'd saved him as much as he'd saved her. Yes, he said, we're going to be all right. And for the first time in 8 years, Marcus Ashford believed it. The morning after came quiet and clean. Marcus woke to birdsong and the smell of coffee already brewing. Lily had learned to work the stove, carefully, under strict supervision, but competently. Small independence earned through proving herself trustworthy. He found her on the porch, still in her nightgown, watching the sun paint the prairie gold. The doll sat beside her, empty of secrets now, but no less cherished. Couldn't sleep? Marcus asked, settling into the chair beside her. I slept fine. She glanced at him. I just wanted to see the morning. Mama used to say mornings are God's way of giving us another chance. To do better. To be better. Marcus sipped the coffee she'd poured for him. Strong, but not bitter. She was learning. Your mama was a wise woman. They sat in companionable silence, the kind of silence that exists between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. Below them, the ranch stretched out, corrals and pastures in the distant line where land met sky. The garden plot showed green now, tiny shoots pushing through dark soil, proof that what's buried doesn't always stay dead. Sometimes it grows. I've been thinking, Lily said, about what Papa told me, that a broken heart holds more love. Do you think that's true? Marcus considered. I reckon it is. A whole heart loves easy, takes it for granted. But a broken heart, one that's been shattered and put back together, that heart knows love's not guaranteed, so it holds tighter, values what it has. Then maybe getting broken isn't the worst thing. Lily's voice was quiet but certain. Maybe it's just the beginning of learning how to really love. Marcus felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe, or acceptance. The understanding that life breaks everyone eventually. The measure of a person is what they build from the pieces. Spring always comes, he said, even after the longest winter. Even after the coldest one? Lily asked. Especially then. She leaned against his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her small frame. Out on the prairie, new calves moved through the grass, each marked with the double A and star, his legacy and hers, branded together, permanent. The sun climbed higher, work waited, fences to mend, cattle to check, 100 small tasks that made up a rancher's life. But for this moment, Marcus Ashford sat with his daughter and watched the day begin. He'd been dead for 8 years, just breathing but not living. Then God, or fate, or plain stubborn chance had sent him a child through a blizzard, a child who needed saving and who saved him right back. Some men spend their whole lives looking for redemption. Marcus had found his in a porcelain doll and a pair of frightened eyes. In choosing to stand when falling would have been easier. In loving when grief said love only leads to loss. The coffee grew cold in his cup. The sun warmed their faces, and somewhere in the house the ledger sat closed on his desk, its final entry already written, Today I became a father again. Not a question, not a hope, a truth.